This episode of Around the Layout is brought to you by Spring Creek Model Trains. Family owned for nearly 25 years, Spring Creek is your destination for model trains. Check out springcreekmodeltrains.com for a wide variety of offerings from today's top manufacturers and exclusive products found nowhere else. Whether in Deschler, Nebraska, or at a train show near you, stop in and say wow. To see where they'll be next, visit their website at springcreekmodeltrains.com. Tully Models is hitting the road. Come see them at the Railroad Hobby Show in West Springfield, Massachusetts, January 25th and 26th in the Mallory Building, Section 133. Then it's off to the Great Scale Model Train Show in Timonium, Maryland in the Craftsman Courtyard at the Maryland State Fairgrounds, February 1st and 2nd. Stop by their displays and learn how Southern Tier Grain Modeler Supply and Steel Mill Modeler Supply can help take your industries to the next level. To learn more, check out their website at tullymodels.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. It's typically time to find out what's happening in model railroading, and we're going to do that. But unfortunately, Tony Cook won't be joining us today. You can envision Tony under a pile of paperwork as he's trying to meet magazine deadlines. But the show must go on. So joining me is Shane Wilson from ScaleTrains. Shane, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Ray. It's great to be back again. I can't believe it's been just over a year.
Yeah, it's been a year since we've been here. Not a year since we've chatted, but yeah, a year since we've caught up on all the things happening at ScaleTrains and, of course, Virtual Railfan as well. And it's just amazing that the year went by in a flash, and I'm sure it felt the same way for you.
You know, the older I get, they always say, the older you get, the faster it goes. And I'm like, I can't figure out how it's going to go any faster.
it still finds a way to do so, doesn't it?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind 2024. Yeah, just a lot of amazing stuff that I had seen come out of ScaleTrains, and we started the year with a show where we talked a bit about the things that had been going on at ScaleTrains, and then you were continuing the road trip, and then I got to see you again in April up at the Torrington Area Model Railroaders event. You were there with your wife and the dog, and we got to hear a bit about ScaleTrains and the history, and got to check out their amazing layout as well.
Well, I'd say that was quite a trip. Seeing the Northeast in like that March, April timeframe, it's still pretty cold. And it was kind of crazy too, because a lot of the campgrounds don't open until mid-May, and we ran until early May. So a lot of those nights we were traveling an hour plus each direction to the meet and greet, but all worked out and let us get quite a bit done. It's amazing. We started in, I believe it was August of 21, and now we're in, we just completed our 44th state. So only 4 more to go. This year we'll knock off North Carolina, South Carolina, and then Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then that just leaves Alaska and Hawaii. And we'll make a submarine out of the truck and get to Hawaii. And now we'll fly there and to Alaska, but we'll get that done in 26. So yeah, a lot of great things on the road trip. An absolute game changer for our company.
As we were talking prior to the show, I had asked you, are you going to drive to Hawaii? And then just realized how silly that thought was of driving. That's not going to happen unless you get a big ferry and float it across. But no, that's amazing. And yeah, I know you were wrapping up the Northeast earlier in 2024. And again, we've talked about this, the whole road trip concept of being able to be at the foot of the customer. And I imagine the people you meet and the things that you've learned along the way, it must be extremely rewarding.
The benefits that come from it are way more than we ever imagined. Being one-on-one with people, and so they can see that you're a real company, real people, not some nameless, faceless entity that's out there, and you really don't have that connection with them. And being able to spend one-on-one time with people is amazing. When we get to Springfield, and I hate to say this, but at Springfield, it's so busy. You're just moving people through. You're trying to have conversations, but when you're 6 to 10 deep, 12 deep, and everybody, you want to give everybody attention and time, you just don't have it there. And with the road trip, we've got that time to really spend with people and have some good conversation. And probably some of the really amazing benefits that have come out is our connections that we've made. Man, I'll tell you, it's incredible the people that we've met, whether it's who have knowledge of the prototype or have documentation, be that paint and lettering diagrams, builder's drawings, photography, you name that kind of thing, or access to the prototype. We've met some CEOs and presidents of railroads and folks that work on the railroad and or have access. We were out in Montana and met a guy who does the canine police for a railroad out there, and we got access that way. And would have never ever made these contacts had we not been out and across the country. So it's been a game changer for our business, and has really, I think, did a lot to help us get past COVID and continue to see growth.
Yeah, all those benefits you probably never even planned on. You probably meet the people and talk to them, but yeah, all the rewards and meeting people on their home turf where they're more relaxed. Like you said, Amherst, people are walking in there, sensory overload. You got 1,000 things going, and the volume is cranked up. The crowd, but yeah, being able to just be with those people and get to see them and be able to see stuff like Torrington and the clubs and everything else where they get to share their passion directly with you, was probably amazing as well.
I tell you, we've seen some incredible model railroads as we've crossed the country. Be that at a club, or we've had an opportunity to visit some personal layouts. Not nearly as many as we've been invited to. Would love to have seen them all. Hopefully, we'll get a chance. Maybe we'll do the road trip version 2 and go visit personal model railroads or something. But man, yeah, talent out there is amazing. Some incredible places. And if you followed us along, we have a road trip Facebook page group that we try to post from every club that we go to. It's a little bit of a challenge. Sometimes we miss, but it's a great way to see where we've been and get a look at some of those railroads. We shoot pictures and video at every railroad, and yeah, incredible talent.
Yeah, and that's just the road trip, and then you guys have been showing up at events and shows, and the next one I saw you at was in June 2024 at the National N-Scale Convention, and I don't know why, and I apologize to the N-Scalers because I went there and I went, whoa, Shane Wilson from ScaleTrains is here, but then again, maybe it's because I'm just so laser focused on HO that I forget that you guys do N-Scale stuff too. It's like, well, of course he would be here, and it was great to see you, and that was a really neat convention in a really neat spot too.
Oh boy, being able to go out and look at the old Bethlehem steel mill was amazing. And you talk about the N-Scale convention. That is like the big event for N-Scale every year, and it's another show that travels. We'll be in Kansas City this June, and that's the show where we really hold for our major N-Scale announcements. So a big preview, right? We'll announce 1, possibly 2 all new locomotives, depending if they come together in June. And then we'll also announce an all new 2, at least 1, if not 2, all new freight cars. And if you come to the manufacturers breakfast, which has been moved to Saturday morning, and if you don't know what that is, it's where the manufacturers get up that exhibit at the show and they share what's going on with their business at N-Scale. And we will announce an all new N-Scale freight car that morning, and you'll be able to walk over to our booth and you will get a free freight car, that car, for attending the breakfast. So there's a little bit of a preview.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, it's amazing. And, again, I'm really fascinated with the way that N-Scale has moved along, and manufacturers like ScaleTrains have really helped that. Really has taken a step up. It's really a legitimate scale now for that kind of operations with that scale. It's amazing.
It was pretty incredible. And go back to the early days of ScaleTrains, which was just 10 years ago. Seems like forever. When we sat down at our primary factory, I can still remember talking to the factory owner, and I said, we want to make N-Scale locomotives and freight cars at the detail level of rivet counter. And the owner of the factory looks at me and goes, Shane, you crazy. And I said, no, I'm serious. This is what we want to do.
Yeah.
And he says, no. And I'm like, really? This is what we want to do? And he's like, no. And I said, trust me. We'll create an all-new market with super detailed locomotives, and then we'll be able to add lighting functions and sound functions. And sure enough, I think we were a little ahead of the curve. It took a little while to catch fire, but now we really have a solid place in the N-Scale market.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's just great to see. I mean, we see the technology just continuously rolling forward in all scales, but to catch up with space becoming such a concern with folks, and being able to, but now with N being a player now, I think it's really going to help a lot of folks get into the hobby in those smaller condensed spaces, the guys and gals that don't quite have all the real estate to start building in the HO and beyond.
Totally agree with you, Ray.
So we saw you there at the N-Scale convention, and yes, Bethlehem was an awesome place to have it. And then, boy, when I saw those AC44 C6Ms that you folks had put out, holy moly, did I start drooling. They were beautiful units, and that's just one of many announcements that you've made in 2024.
Yeah, 2024 was a great year. The AC44 C6M was an all-new locomotive announcement, and we were able to do a lot of the unique horse main units, and we should see those here this spring. And then, of course, when the second run comes along, for everybody that's been asking, we'll do the Salute to the Railroaders version, and we'll also do the Tag Heritage unit in the second run. And then, of course, we'll do the rest of the main units in the third run. And then we announced the HOGP40s last year at Springfield. Those just delivered in December. And then we announced the N-Scale Jeep 30 at the N-Scale convention last year. Those will actually be here probably the first week of February, so right after Springfield. And had a lot of other announcements, where we did more road names, more paint schemes. Probably one of the biggest things we did last year was the CSX Heritage units. And we announced the first 5 and then started continuing on. So we just shipped the first 5 in December. The next ones are on the way to us now. We'll have some more this summer. And then the remaining 6 will come next year, very early part of the year. And then here recently, some other all-new announcements. We just announced the Trinity 7500 series boxcar, both in operator and rivet counter. Some big news there. If you haven't looked at the operator model, take a second look. We are making a change in the operator freight car line. We're now going to finely molded grab irons and ladders. And when you look at this car, you almost have to do a double take to realize that those features are actually molded on and not separate parts, and still maintaining that value price point. We're right at, I think it's $32.99 on singles. Quantity buys at $29.99. And then the rivet counter series, a ton of different variations, which are allowing us to do road names that haven't been offered before. Gunderson has a similar size car, but has different ends, different roof, different sides. So we're able to get things like UP with the high reporting marks, doing some BNSF, of course, the T-boxes and a ton of other road names. And then we just announced, and this has been a long time coming, is HOSD 40-2s with ditch lights. Finally, doing versions with CSX YN2. We're doing B in whiteface, also the B unit that goes along with that. You've got NS in the thoroughbred scheme with ditch light. A couple of other road names have ditch lights too. So finally starting to cycle through some of the ditch light versions and bring in those. And a little preview for Springfield. Watch for the GP30 rebuild announcements to come at Springfield. So for folks who are doing more 80s to today, 90s to today, starting to give you some more things that really fit that era.
We talked at the top of the show about time passing by, and it made me think about, I had you on the show with Tony. It was just before the National Train Show, and you had hinted about a release that was going to be announced there. And then mid-2024, I think it came out, the museum quality SD45X. And I was like, wait a minute. That was a year ago. Like I was like, holy moly, it's been a year, and it just that passage of time. I was like, we just talked to Shane. No, we didn't. This was a year. So it's amazing. You're seeing, from announcement now to release has really given me this passage of time feeling. And it's really cool to see, an announcement come to fruition and then these products hit the market.
Well, one of the things for us too, and I think that's one of the reasons that time seems to pass so quick. When we make a new product announcement, an all new announcement, you're going to see it, touch it, hold it, hear it. So that it's not vaporware. The project is in the can, so to speak, and we've spent the money and it's going to come to market. So for us, once we make that new product announcement, usually there's a little variance, but within 8 to 12 months, that product's going to be on your layout.
Was it Tom Petty that said waiting's the hardest part? Well, yeah, it is when you start to see these announcements, and yeah, it's great when they're pretty quick on top, from announcement to release. That definitely helps us stay patient a little bit more when it's a short term.
And I hope it helps folks budget too, because we know there's a lot of product out there, not just from us, but other manufacturers. So we want to try to get as close to those dates as we can. Understanding though, one of the caveats to that is we're not going to deliver a product that we're unhappy with. For instance, like we haven't announced this publicly, so you'll be the first to know. We'll put it out next week. But like within the second group of CSX heritage units, didn't quite have one of the colors down on the RF&P, and then there's another color on the New York Central that we weren't quite happy with. And it's like, rather than meet a date and get them out there, let's make sure the color's right. So those will come in the summertime rather than right now. But any project, we'd rather be late and have it right than ship it and be wrong.
And that's so stand up. And I've talked about this, and we've had other manufacturers of that. It happens. It's a process. And you talk about colors, and I can imagine just how difficult that can be. What looks like on the screen and on paper certainly doesn't look like what's on the model. That they don't translate, and trying to get that right, and then trying to get it right from afar is the other challenge I can imagine. But it's got to be a painful thing but you still do it. It's, I'm sure, it'd be easy. The easy way is to kind of close an eye to it and just let it go. But the hard and right way of doing it is to, suffer that pain, but get it right. And that's really stand up of ScaleTrains to do that.
Well, thank you, Ray. But, and as modelers, we understand how important it is. And it's also, if you don't make it right, folks aren't going to trust you down the road. And color is probably one of the most difficult things that we deal with. We match the prototype color whenever possible, whether we're getting a paint chip, here's a crazy thing that we do. A lot of times we'll get paint code numbers, and we try to find the original paint manufacturer, and then we'll have that made. Well, that you're used to going to like an automotive supplier. You're paying $300-400 for a pint of a color, and then we have to spray that color, and then it gets color matched. But the subjective part, one of the crazy things is there's a video on our YouTube channel about the UP yellow that we use. We use the actual UP yellow paint code. Some folks think it's too light, but if you take it and you look at it in natural light versus fluorescent light versus the different ratings of an LED light, it color shifts. And there's nothing you can do. Do you allow for the color shift under fluorescence? Well, people are going to LEDs. Well, if you do it for LED, then it color shifts for the guys on fluorescence. But wait, you take it outside and it looks totally different. That was actually one of the issues on the two delayed heritage units. If it was sitting on my desk and it had a little shadow, perfect. The moment you flipped it over and you saw the light, then it shifted. And then you take it outside, it's like it's a whole nother color. And so you're trying to balance all of that, understanding that people are going to look at that under different lighting. And it makes it really difficult.
It's almost like that meme that was out there a while ago, right? With that, what color is this dress? Is it green? Is it blue? Yeah. Is it that? It's like kind of that same thing, right? Like, what color is this actually?
Yeah. And there are certain colors that shift bad. And, yellow is one of those, like that UP yellow. The good news is if you go out and what I tell people, if they're unhappy with the color, I'm like, go stand trackside at UP. You're going to see every color under the rainbow of yellow you can think of.
Right. Yeah, but what we think is scientific for a business or a railroad, whatever they bought that time, especially smaller railroads, I can imagine, because they got something close. I mean, the local railroad around here, Providence and Worcester, I looked at the end noses for the B39s with Don Iris, and they have P&W located in all different spots depending. Mm-hmm. And then the P&W is slightly different. And I can only imagine they probably, whatever shop they took it to, the guy walked in there with like a business card size logo and said, "Hey, make this logo for me about, 5 feet wide." And then they're trying to scale it and whatever their interpretation. So you got different looking logo. So yeah, trying to pin that down, all those little details, boy, that just must make for long days at ScaleTrains to be able to get all of that right.
It could be rough, and it can cost a lot of money too. There's been times where we've had to go back and remake things after they've been made just because it didn't work out like we thought it would.
Yeah, one of the things that happened in 2024, and I'll really say amazing the stuff that you can do when you got folks like you at ScaleTrains, and you had the Hurricane Helene went through the South, and your company's response to Hurricane Helene was just absolutely amazing, and the work that you were able to do to help people in their time of need.
Well, if you go back to the beginning of ScaleTrains and the very first business plan, Mike used to say that, and still says this to me. He says, "Shane, God's bringing us together for a much higher purpose than making model trains." And as we've grown and been truly blessed, it's our job to give back. It's whether it's to the model railroad community, to the preservation community, or our local communities. And something we don't talk much about because it's really between us and God, but we, as the founders, and now we've expanded it to our senior leadership team. We all have charities. We have a budget every month, and we have local charities that each of us select, and we make donations to. And that's thanks to the generosity of the folks who buy from us. And with Helene, boy, I tell you, it was unbelievable. Thankfully, where we are here in Southeast Tennessee, we really didn't see much damage, but our friends and neighbors just to the east of us, whether that be in Northeast Tennessee, Southwest North Carolina, even Northern Georgia, really got just, I mean, it was terrible. Our son is actually on search and rescue. He actually went to North Carolina and worked search and rescue and came back and shared some of the stories. And it was obvious we had to do something. And it's kind of touching, right? He talked about some of the things that he saw, and you just, the power of floodwaters, just amazing. He talked about how they came upon a black bear, and this black bear had its fur just totally stripped off of it from the floodwaters. That's how powerful the water is. And
Wow.
yeah, it's just unreal. There was a lot of attention to Asheville, and deservedly so, because a lot happened there in Asheville. But Northeast Tennessee there wasn't a lot of media, wasn't a lot of news coverage, and I'll tell you, there's people sleeping in tents right now and
Yeah.
with snow on the ground and 20-degree weather because they don't have a home. So we partnered with Operation Blessing, and Operation Blessing is an organization founded by Pat Roberts and his group, and and it happens to be with someone at our church that drives a truck for him. And so we were really blessed to work with our local community and and then also, we put it out to the model railroad community. And I'll tell you what, we have great people in our world. A lot of folks stepped up and made some pretty sizable donations financially, and we bought supplies. We were able to fill probably about 2/3 of a 53-foot trailer, and that trailer got pulled within a couple of weeks of the hurricane, and then we had some money left over, and we've been working with an organization out of Irwin, Tennessee, and in December we took the remaining money because things shift, and if you've never been involved in disaster relief, this was a first for me at this scale, and the first thing's immediate needs: food and water, and then it becomes kind of the secondary needs: clothing and all medicines and that kind of stuff, and then it becomes kind of the rebuilding, and that's where things are at right now. And this organization had given us a list of a lot of building materials and things of that nature, and we said, why don't we just write a check and you guys go out and buy what you need? You've got relationships with the home improvement stores, and that way you have exactly what you need. We did this through Community Fellowship Church. All the donations went there. We didn't want to be a part of the cash donations. That way there's some integrity there, and it goes to a nonprofit. And Community Fellowship donated the $18,000 in cash that was still left over. We did a little bit of a match to that. We added another $2,000 to what we'd already matched previously, and so we sent $20,000 to that organization for building materials. All together with the financial donations and the goods donations, we estimate we were over $50,000 able to give back to folks in Northeast Tennessee, and for a lot of people not in our area, from across the country and across the world, actually donated in the model railroad community, and want to say thank you, because it is about making a difference in people's lives.
It sure is. And it comes as no surprise to me, out of the model railroading community comes this kind of thing. It's just the nature of our community, the nature of our people, for sure, that are always out giving and extend themselves out there. And thank you for coordinating that and being a part of that. And that need is still ongoing today. So
Absolutely, it is.
we'll share some links if you want to contribute, because we know about the devastation now in Los Angeles, and it
Mhm.
seems like it's just what happens. Attention focuses on the most recent thing, but there's still a need in the South for help for these folks, like you mentioned, sleeping in tents in cold weather and everything else. It's gonna be a long rebuilding process, and the help is also needed there. So we'll share the links if you want to contribute and help. We'll share them on our website, aroundthelayout.com/141.
Thank you. Appreciate you doing that.
Talk about the, extending the road trip. You folks headed to, we talked about the U.S. stops, but you kind of went international with the road trip a little bit too, and made the venture into Mexico, right?
Yeah, so Mike, he called it a road trip detour. He said, I'm going to Mexico. Would love to do the road trip presentation. So I worked with Mike on that, and he took that south of the border, and it's been pretty interesting. We've been going to Mexico's version of the National NMRA Convention the last few years, and made some awesome contacts being able to do that. And it is pretty interesting. It's a different world in Mexico when it comes to like prototype access. It has been a real door opener there as well, and meeting some great people. And we're going back again here in 25. We'll make 2 trips, and I think Mike's wife Sylvia always goes, and if you don't know, Sylvia's originally from Mexico, and boy, you ever get a chance, she's a fantastic cook. Love to have her when I go to California and see her. Boy, she can really cook, and great lady, big heart, and she goes, and Mike knows some Spanish, but it's not his first language. So Sylvia goes and is Mike's interpreter, and they treat the both of them like absolute royalty and take such good care of them. And it's great. It's really opened up some new avenues for us. And I see at some point we'll probably do something in Canada as well. It won't be necessarily the road trip. We have to meet DOT regulations with the truck and the trailer, but and we're doing that for the U.S. and that's been, to say a learning curve is an understatement, and I don't want to have to go through that again with Canada. But we'll probably end up doing something at some point where we do that. And we also, we're now attending Super Train in Calgary every year. That happens in April. Mike will be there again this year, and with as much as what's going on now with CP and CPKC, and the first equipment coming for CPKC, it's a good chance to see our folks north of the border as well.
Do you see that same thing for Mexico as far as what the consensus is modeling down there? Is it Mexican Railway, or are they modeling more, you say U.S. railroad? Is it a popularity of having CPKC with, KCS having a presence in Mexico? Ferromex. Is that what you see in that market?
Yeah, a lot of Ferromex, KCS to Mexico, KCS now. We'll see more CPKC once we start delivering that, which will be actually here in just a few weeks. So if you haven't heard yet, Norfolk Southern worked with Wabtec and Ferromex, and basically there's a AC-44 C6M rebuilds that are now going to Ferromex. And wow. So that'll give us a new paint scheme. I'd assume those will end up in Zebra at some point. So a lot of great things. We do sell a lot of product across both borders. Canada and Mexico are 2 big customers for us.
Yeah, that's really cool to see. It's an international hobby for sure, and neat to hear what folks are modeling beyond the United States, where both you and I are at. We know we have a lot of great fans around the world: Australia, New Zealand, and
mm-hmm.
we have listeners in Mexico, and obviously our friends in Canada and beyond. It's just amazing how this hobby travels around the planet.
When we look at our numbers, I think now we're over 60 countries globally that we ship to.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's really, really cool. The hobby is that verse. It's really cool. And then, of course, there's the train shows. We know we've got a big one that some folks may have heard of coming up here very shortly, the Railroad Hobby Show in West Springfield, Mass. But you've been doing quite a few other shows in 2024. You mentioned you're going to Super Train in Calgary, but I also saw you folks were at Train Fest again this year, too.
We were at Train Fest again this year. It was pretty unique. It was downtown, which was the first time that had happened in the convention center there. Same place where the Republican National Convention was held last year. So it had been updated, and a beautiful facility. Had a great time. And then, of course, this year in 25, it's going to move back to the fairgrounds, and will be Veterans Day weekend again, kind of back to the tradition. Of course, we did a lot of other shows. We did the National Train Show. We were at, and of course, that was in Long Beach. We did some of the RPM meets. We did Cocoa last year. I did it again this year. We did the St. Louis RPM meet. That's really become, if you're an RPM person, that's the one to go to. It's pretty amazing. That's kind of become the largest of all of them. And we did some smaller shows that we've been trying to hit some regional shows. We did Neuse River over in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And I think you'll see us do some more regional shows as time goes by. We've done some in the past, and Right now, our focus is on the 2026 National Train Show, of course, coming to Chattanooga. And that's going to be a huge event for us and putting a lot of our energy there. This year, we're kind of doing the core shows. We'll probably do that again in 26, and then 27 we'll branch out. But a lot of great things going on for that. And we'll probably have to sit down as we get a little closer, talk more about that, Ray. Would love to have you come down as our guest. We're going to do a steam excursion on the Thursday before the show. Could be a double header, and if it all comes together with a steam locomotive from out of town, and the entire ScaleTrains crew will be on board. The virtual railfan crew will have a big lunch in Somerville, Georgia, and we'll make all of our announcements for the show that on the train trip, and then of course all the activities that surround NMRA, and of course the National Train Show will be on Saturday and Sunday, and I think this could be one of the largest NMRA conventions ever for attendance. Signs already are really good, and hopefully you can come down and spend some time with us, Ray.
Yeah, it is definitely on my calendar for 2026. What an amazing place to have it. Of course, in your backyard, but in nice weather in Tennessee, in not only the excursion railroad stuff that you were talking about, but prototype railroad. It's just going to be a great event. Imagine just the events that are going to be surrounding this convention. It's going to be incredible. I'm really looking forward to 2026.
As a modeler's podcast, right? You're around the layout is hitting the core customer for us and the core person. Your listeners are going to be happy to know that Pele Soberg is coming from Denmark.
Awesome.
Pele will be here to do some clinics, and he'll be at our office. Of course, we have the Daneberg his Daneberg sub railroad, and that'll be as part of the layout tours. And of course, we'll be on the layout tours, and a great chance to come and see our headquarters as well. We're doing a lot of work. We've been working already for months to do some remodeling and upgrades and painting and all that kind of stuff, and getting the office decorated. And so by the time we get to the convention, if anyone's visited us before, it'll be a whole different looking place on the inside.
That's amazing. And you mentioned Pele, and his modeling, obviously incredible. You know what impresses me almost as much? How well dressed he is while he's doing his modeling. Like, I couldn't dress like that and model. I don't know about you, Shane, but I'd have paint all over my nice clothes, and you see him in his pictures, and he's always well dressed and just so neat.
Well, the other thing that amazes me about Pele is we all think we need all these specialized tools and gadgets and things to model, right?
Yeah.
And Pele's probably one of the most simple toolboxes you'll ever find.
Yeah. So that's going to be super opportunity to meet great modelers such as Pele, and be able to check out all the work you folks have been doing at ScaleTrains headquarters. And so we talked a lot about ScaleTrains, but I know there's been other things going on as well. You've got virtual railfan as well. And you and I talked a bit about that during the N-Scale convention in person, and some of the stuff that you were telling me about, that the technology that's moving virtual railfan forward is very impressive.
Yeah, this is something that we are super excited about for the future. In our world, the biggest subscription magazine probably reaches 75, 85,000 subscribers a month. We're reaching over 750,000 people on virtual railfan every month for the last month. And it's crazy. I mean, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 million views in the past month.
Wow.
So the audience is really large, well beyond the model railroad industry. And we see this as a vehicle to share our favorite hobby with everybody, grow our business, grow the industry, grow other people's business. And I'm going to make a pretty bold statement. I think in 3 to 5 years, virtual railfan will be a bigger company than ScaleTrains.
Oh,
it's been a little bit slow going, but now we're finally getting the momentum. We announced 2 new locations in December. We announced Chesterton, Indiana, also known as Porter Junction. And man, that is one busy spot, one of the busiest places on the whole network. We have over 60 locations and 100 cameras across the United States, have one in Canada. And then we announced Glendale, Ohio. And if you haven't seen the video from last week, there's a video we caught there of a car that was stranded on the tracks, stuck in the snow. And the lights come on, and so 3 good Samaritans run up. And just as the gates are coming down, they push the car clear. The train comes by. Thank God no one was hurt, and
right.
The car didn't get hit. But that's been something that was really wild. And then with Springfield this coming week, we're going to announce 4 more new locations. And we'll unveil our first 4K camera, and as well, and that'll be in an existing location that we've upgraded. And then you're also going to see our first 4K all new location that will reveal. And that's pretty exciting for us. So adding to that technology, we made a lot of infrastructure upgrades over the past year. We have this thing we call a gateway, and it's what I'll call a magic box that we plug in, and it helps give us pretty much 99.9% uptime. It talks to the internet all the time, and it knows when feeds are have any kind of lag or anything, and it's making up for that in the sound it takes. So we made a lot of those upgrades. We upgraded Horseshoe Curve's camera this past year. Would love to get to 4K there, but internet's an issue. We also upgraded the light there at Horseshoe. There'll be some more camera upgrades this year, some more existing locations will get 4K. We're on a pretty aggressive location addition. And I think I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of cameras a month on average from now through the end of the year. Our new locations come online. And then the other big thing that we're working on, and we'll have a free preview at the show. Not quite ready yet for everybody to have, but we'll be previewing our all new television app. And for folks like to watch on TV, you'll be able to watch on Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, Apple TV. And then we'll also have a preview of our new mobile app, and that'll be for Android users as well as Apple users. And then if it all comes together, we know this spring, that's our goal. And and I think we're well on track for that on the apps. They're well under development at this point. And hopefully by the time we get to Denver and the Rocky Mountain Train Show, we'll be able to unveil that. And the big thing for us as we bring all this online, we're really focused on growing our paid memberships. Right now, that's $4.99 a month, which is an incredible value. That'll continue through at least the early part of April. There will be, once some more of these come online, and we've been real open and honest, there's going to be a price increase. Right now, we want everyone to see what we're doing, but it costs a lot of money to be able to bring all of this technology in and to be able to grow the network and add 4K. And if you don't know, 4K actually, believe it or not, adds 4 times the cost for the streaming.
It should be 4X instead of 4K, right?
Yeah, it should be 4X because you're using a lot more bandwidth. And so that those costs all cost more, but we want to, put our money where our mouth is and show folks, not only are we telling you we're going to do this, we're doing it before we increase the price. And even then the price won't go up much. I think we'll probably end up at $7.99 or $8.99 a month. So it's still an incredible value. And the couple of things that you get for that, all new locations are getting what we call a PTZ or pan tilt zoom camera. That's the kind of camera that can, look left to right, up and down. You can zoom in on the train, and so that camera is for paid members. Then there's a fixed camera that is also at that location. The fixed camera remains free. You can go to YouTube; it's ad supported. You can still watch that camera. 4K is only going to be available to members because of the additional cost. Folks think that a company that's on YouTube I think we're approaching 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, and that people think all that ad revenue that you get, you're just swimming in cash, and that's probably the furthest thing from the truth. So memberships is really where it's at for us, and a lot of efforts going into that to grow the membership side. And then a little later this year, I'm actually going to travel to China, and we're going to source some products that will actually be available exclusively through the virtual railfan channel. And the idea is to reach what I'll call an armchair railroader, someone who enjoys real trains. Maybe they're not modelers, but we'll give them some products that fit their world. And then hopefully we can also make some of those people model railroaders as well.
I'm sure a lot of folks have wondered this. What is the selection criteria for camera locations? What are some of the things that you're looking for from virtual railfan when you put a camera up?
That is a great question. The hardest part is just finding a host. That really is the most difficult, and coupling that to the criteria that we look at. We're looking for train counts, right? We hope to be in a location that has 50 plus trains a day. That's not viable across the board, but Chesterton's one of those locations. We're approaching around 100 trains a day, so there's always a train to watch. But we're looking at other things too. What other visual interests are there? Is it signals? Is it crossing gates? Is it a crossing? Is there a downtown location that has events and festivals? Is it over water? Is it a bridge? Are there boats? Is there an airport nearby? Is there some kind of other transportation? Things that can keep people engaged when there's not a train on screen. one of the big things that we're looking at right now is where are the large population centers that we don't have a presence, and finding the busy crossings or things like the racetrack in Chicago, things of that nature where it's well known. Things like a horseshoe curve, well known hotspots, right? And if folks have suggestions, we're always open to those ideas. There's a place on the Virtual Railfan website where you can suggest a new location, and one of the I think the biggest thing is helping us. We're not going to be on railroad property, and we get a lot of requests for that. We would love to be, but the real railroads, that's not their thing, right? And I understand that. So we're going to have to be. Usually, we're on it could be a railroad museum. It could be a business. We have some that are on people's homes. We will pay for the internet service for that location. So and we pay for the full camera installation. Camera installation is easily $8,000 to $10,000 when we get started. We take care of all of that expense, but it's finding a location that has good traffic and has a real visual interest, and you got to have great sight lines. We have someone on staff who's been in the real broadcast world and has a great eye for knowing how to give the best shot. If you look at our cameras, we don't have the fisheye effect. A lot of folks do that. They're using low-end security cameras, and then the fisheye effect is where it looks like the train's kind of going around the world as it comes past the camera. Right. And none of our cameras have that visual effect to them. Another big thing, too, is weather. We look at, you look at Arvada, California, you look at scenery, man, that camera is gorgeous. It's up on top of the mountain overlooking the Big Ten curves, and you see the deer walk up to the camera from time to time. And it's anything that's going to create interest even beyond the trains. What else is going to keep people wanting to watch that particular location?
Well, I know it's certainly fun to use Virtual Railfan when folks are going out. We mentioned her on the podcast. Don Iris and his dad went out to Horseshoe Curve, and we were all still back in our homes here in Connecticut and beyond, watching Don and his dad railfanning Horseshoe Curve from the Virtual Railfan cam. So that was fun to do and see them, and they're turning around waving at the camera. And of course, you guys have you do the video collaborations where you'll catch people waving grab at the bags. Cameras and share the grab bag. And it's certainly neat to, very well done. It's an awesome concept to be able to basically railfan from your couch and be able to see all these amazing places. And for a model railroader, it's an awesome resource for research and seeing what's going on in those areas without having to jump on a plane or jump in a car and have to go there.
Yeah, we love our waivers and showing those folks. And one thing too that we're working on, hopefully we'll announce or unveil when we get to the apps, is there's going to be a signal at every camera, and it's a red-green indicator. And if it's red, there's no train. If it's green, there's a train. And so that way, it's going to make it a lot easier to watch trains. And then we have several new, I'll call them channels coming, where it'll be all trains all the time. So if let's say you're a BNSF fan and you want to watch BNSF, it'll be things that we've captured at those locations, and you'll watch BNSF all the time. Or if you're an Amtrak person, you can watch Amtrak all the time. We know that folks want to see the trains. You don't want that dead time between trains. And so we're going to do a lot more to fill the gaps.
It just amazes me, and kudos to you folks over at Virtual Railfan. Of course, ScaleTrains mentality as well. You could easily just say, okay, here's all the cameras, and you go ahead and watch them, but you're always looking for new ways to make it better, which is just really cool. Like, it just continuous improvement would be the term.
I'm excited. There's some features coming, and I can't share yet, but this time next year, we'll be able to talk about some things that'll be absolutely revolutionary when it comes to watching trains live.
Do you ever think you'd be into Virtual Railfan when you started ScaleTrains? Like, this whole journey that you've been on from, starting ScaleTrains to now, now you're into video and, these live cameras and stuff.
It's a great question. And I'm going to say yes, but it's a weird yes. We started ScaleTrains in May of 14, and we moved to Tennessee in August of 14. And over that winter, I got involved with the local model railroad community, and we were having an event. And one of the founders of Virtual Railfan came to the event, and he was telling us all about what Virtual Railfan is and sharing the numbers. And as I sat there, I'm like, I'd love to own a piece of that company someday. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know how we could ever afford it, because I have that perception of YouTube people making oodles of cash. I'm like, we'd never be able to afford to buy into this. And then, some 6, 7 years later, the opportunity presents itself, and we're now the major shareholder within Virtual Railfan. And the thing about Virtual Railfan is Mike and Justin, the original founders. If you don't know their story, real quickly, they love to go to Folkston down in Georgia, and one was lived in Mississippi, one lived in Florida, and they would meet up, and their friends would be like, "Man, we'd love to see the trains too." And somehow they cobbled together some technology, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, and were able to watch trains at Folkston. And it was one of those things that suddenly started to take off and grow. And then other people wanted to watch, and then they started adding cameras. And Mike and Justin will tell you they're not business people. That's not it. This is one of those things that grew out of a passion for them. And the thing that we bring to the table for Virtual Railfan is the business side. Virtual Railfan was sustainable, but not really what I'll call very profitable, not where they could continue to invest in themselves and add locations and pay salaries and benefits that are worthy of what the talent of people are, those kind of things. And so that's been our whole mission, is let's bring that to Virtual Railfan. We've actually consolidated marketing in Tennessee here recently. So the ScaleTrains marketing team is actually doing the Virtual Railfan marketing. There's going to be some more things that'll happen in that realm. So we're bringing the horsepower that we have from ScaleTrains into the Virtual Railfan business. And I think that that's what's really helping us see now the addition of new cameras and new locations, and the investment in the TV app and the mobile app, and a lot more to come. This is a big focus for us as a company. And for those that are worried we can walk and chew gum at the same time, we'll still continue to a lot going on in the ScaleTrains business. We've really grown. We just hired our 27th employee. That's just way beyond my wildest dreams. I couldn't even imagine 10 years ago. So a lot of energy is going in on the ScaleTrains side. We're actually working on a whole senior leadership team that'll be able to take ScaleTrains after the original founders step back in the next decade or so, and make sure that ScaleTrains continues into the future.
I know that's a big passion of yours, and you take a lot of pride in a lot of, you realize the importance of it, the employing folks like you do, to be able to have these people on your team, and knowing that the steps that you're taking is their livelihood, but giving them a place to also follow their passions in the hobby and in the business.
That's one of the things I'm most excited about. I love strategic direction. That's where my heart is, and marketing. I love marketing too. But for me, I look at the talent that we brought on board in the last few years. Some fantastic people. Some folks that are listening are going to know folks like a Chris Brimley, a Matt Gadinsky, Matt Gentry, and many others. I don't mean to slight anyone by not mentioning all the names, but there's definitely folks in the organization that are much younger than the founding four. We have some incredible talent in their 20s, and I see these people as the ones that can learn our culture. We talk a lot about, we hire culture first, talent second, and you have to have talent. There's no doubt about it. But if you have a heart for our business, you'll learn and you'll grow, and you'll expand your skill sets, and we're going to coach you, and we're going to bring you along and help you mature in your career. And I believe we already have that talent in-house that will bring ScaleTrains the next 20, 30 years. And that excites me. The one thing that, I saw back in my previous days at Horizon was the original founders, the Stevens family, were the salt of the earth, walk through fire people. And I think one of the things I saw happen that really bothered me is when they left the company, they made us employee owned, which was phenomenal. That didn't bother me. I mean, good Lord, they took great care of us. But they brought someone in from the outside, and that person just didn't understand the culture and couldn't live it. And we have people that live it every single day, and that's what makes me believe that we'll be here for the long pull.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing to hear, especially for someone as myself who's seen some odd things happen in corporate America, that there's still this real rooted in good fundamentals and values, a company like yours. So congratulations to you and your team for establishing that.
Oh, thank you. I give all the credit to the team. I mean, we have an amazing team, and they're the reason we're able to do what we do.
So let's talk about this big show we've been kind of hinting at, the Railroad Hobby Show up in West Springfield, Massachusetts. It's the one we've been chatting on about for, I don't know, since the end of the last one. It seems we're always looking forward to going back to West Springfield, and For folks that haven't gotten there, I keep encouraging folks to try to find a way someday to get yourself to West Springfield, Mass at the end of
Totally
January.
agree.
It's an amazing show. And I'm sure, this time of year, I'm just amazed that we were able to even get you back on the air, because I know you're busier than a one-armed paper hanger, and your entire team is that kind of the same way, getting ready for this big show.
Well, the great part is, I could remember back in the early days when there were 5 or 6 of us, and I'd be up all night, literally Friday night, trying to get the products on the computer so they'd be ready to sell on Saturday morning. Thank God those days are over. Um, a lot of those things now are farmed out to the team, and the team is the one that really brings all the announcements together. I'm just helping support them and make sure they get the tools. This is going to be a great show, though. We always want to have an all new product announcement for Springfield, and that's always the goal. This year, our tagline is "A New Era Begins Again," and so we'll be unveiling our first HO transition era diesel. We'll have models for you to see and touch and hold and hear, and all those good things in the booth on Saturday morning, and that'll be our HO announcement. We'll have not an all new announcements but we'll have an in-scale announcement. And for all new, stay tuned for the in-scale convention. And then we'll have our next S-Gauge announcement or S-Scale announcement. And we'll announce the next group of HO GP30s, including the GP30 rebuilds, as we mentioned earlier. And then stop by the virtual railfan booth. You'll get to see all the 4 locations we're going to unveil. You'll be able to see the new 4K locations. You'll get to preview the apps. And the ScaleTrains and the VR booth, virtual railfan booth, we're right together. So, and we'll have a great team of folks there. And then we have something exciting going on with around the layout too. You want to share what that is, Ray?
Yeah, well, we talk about announcements, and we got to wait on the big ones from ScaleTrains, but the one we can share today is that in partnership with ScaleTrains, we will be giving away not 1, not 2, 3, or 4. We're going to give away a set of 5 CSX Heritage Unit locomotives, all DCC and sound. I'm going to let Shane talk about that Heritage unit stuff, because he's got some other stuff that's been going on around it. But we're going to be doing that giveaway at the Around the Layout booth, which is going to be in the Young Building, section 89D. All you got to do is come over. You show us that you're subscribed to the podcast on the phone. We give you an entry slip, goes in the box, and we will draw that winner Sunday at 2:00. So you'll want to make sure you get over there before that time. So awesome prize that we're going to be giving away this year. Last year we gave away 1 locomotive. It was awesome. And now times 5. You're going to walk out of there as the winner with 5 locomotives under your arm. That's going to be a really cool opportunity.
Well, we're excited to be able to partner with you, Ray. This, you do a lot for the model railroad community, and the CSX Heritage Program has been huge for us. It's kind of funny. We make an ES44 announcement, and the joke is another GEVO, but it really is something that's helping fund a lot of what we do in our business. And we're pretty excited because we've been able to partner with CSX. When CSX announced the Heritage Program, I was reaching out right away. It's kind of funny. I had an ulterior motive. We had about a dozen or so licenses from CSX, and the rumor was there was going to be 20 locomotives. And I'm like, well, maybe if I can get them to increase our license, we can figure out what the other 8 are going to be. And did a lot of work with corporate. It was a challenge, though, to find the right person. And that probably happened in May of 23, around that time frame. By the fall of 23, we finally got to the right person. And we got access to the paint shop in Waycross, Georgia. And believe it or not, by the time that CSX got to the Monon unit, which is the black and the gold, we were supplying the color chips to CSX, so that they wanted to make sure the colors were correct for the history of the locomotives. One of the big challenges, even for CSX, believe it or not, I think that was the 9th locomotive. They were having troubles getting colors and finding the right colors to match what they would have been, all those years ago. And by the 10th unit, which was the RF&P, we were actually supplying the artwork. We're doing the logos, we're doing the heralds, we're doing the colors, we're doing the stencils. Everything that you see, we were providing to CSX based on the historical information that we have, so that they could be as historically accurate as possible. And so we were involved all the way from the 9th to the 21st unit, several trips to Waycross to be able to make sure that the colors are correct, and an interesting process, right? So we supplied, if we had them, one of our guys, his father-in-law, who's since passed, had access, or actually has all of the paint chips from EMD at LaGrange.
Oh.
So you go back to all that history there. And then we reached out to a lot of railroad museums and people that we know to make sure that we get the right colors. And so we would send them to CSX and they would mix the paint. Well, then we would, once they mix the paint, we would actually do a spray out to match that color to go back to make sure that that we're accurate on the colors as well. And then something amazing last week. I'll tell you what. I've been at, this is my 40th year in this industry, and one of the highlights of my career happened a week ago yesterday. I had an opportunity to meet the CEO of CSX. That's Joe Hendricks, and Joe, what a super guy. You talk about culture, on the culture he's trying to bring to CSX. He understands his people first, and they're living that value. And they're very excited about the Heritage Program. Had a chance to go to corporate and actually up on the top floors where the executive boardroom is and lay the first 5 locomotives out on their boxes because we created special packaging. And then had some of the second group there to set on the table on the brochure. Also, even had a computer with some other ideas. All right. Yeah. Playing there on a slideshow. You never know. Don't know unless you try. And had a great visit. I thought it would last 10 minutes. You know, you're talking to a multi-billion-dollar company CEO, and he was so personal. We were in the boardroom for well over half an hour, and he actually invited us to go see his office, and we went to see his office, and what really super down to earth person. Got to meet the director of communications, the VP of communications, and the great thing is, I think you'll see some actual video content come out of this. We'll be going back to corporate later this summer. And then we stopped on the way home in Waycross again and presented the paint shop with their first 5 samples and also the superintendent for that region, the samples for the region, and got to see the one CSX employee unit was there at the paint shop. That was pretty cool. So great relationship with CSX on this. Can't say thank you enough to the people at CSX who've made this possible. There are a lot of people that we've worked with to be able to have this inside track and make sure that the locomotives are as accurate as possible. And it's a real honor to be able to present the first 5 to the Around the Layout podcast audience and give the opportunity to give those away. That's a $2,000 retail value that someone's going to walk away with there on Sunday. And if you're a Heritage fan and you haven't, and I'll put a plug in, right? Still got the first 5 units in stock. We ordered plenty of extras, and the next ones will be here in early February with more to follow later this year.
Yeah, that's an absolutely amazing opportunity for a listener of Around the Layout podcast to be able to do. We really appreciate our relationship with ScaleTrains, and relationship's kind of that key word, right? Even with you and CSX, I've been thinking about that. You know, you started with just to create the models of the heritage units. Now you're a partner with CSX to help them, and you're working together, which is just an awesome thing. And we talked about, what would you have imagined when you started all this? Now there's another thing. Would you ever imagine to be able to have the opportunity to have a meeting with a CEO of CSX and be talking about paint schemes with them and helping them put together units?
Not in my wildest dreams.
Yeah.
The railroad's job is to move freight. It's not to work with a model train company. And when I say that, though, the railroads have been really good to us. We have a good relationship with BNSF, Norfolk Southern. Haven't really figured out a relationship with Union Pacific yet. But overall, and a lot of the short line railroads too, and have been really good to us. But they hear from rail fans all the time, folks who want access, and there's a safety concern there and a liability concern. And no, I never, in my wildest dreams, would I ever think. And I've also been blessed to have a phone conversation with the CEO of BNSF when we did the 25th anniversary unit. So never dreamed that those things would happen. And for me, I mean, it's just an absolute highlight. I am so excited about that opportunity. And it was pretty neat. You talk about that culture, our people, what they did to help make this happen, even just getting the meeting with Joe, they get it and they understand how big of a deal this is for our company. And we talked about a lot of other opportunities while we were there. And I don't think this will be the last.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. Even these railroads, and I think about it quite a bit as I see these heritage schemes or these other paint jobs and how it's really kind of being done, especially the heritage units. They're really being done more for us as the rail fans than they are for them. I mean, that locomotive is going to pull the same amount of freight no matter what paint's blown on it, right? They could just leave them all black and run them like that with some lettering on it to meet requirement. But it really is kind of for us too, to be able to take a step back in time and see these former railroads, these fallen flags still back on the rails, and see that paint. So it's just amazing that they even participate in these programs and do these, and then to be able to work with you folks at ScaleTrains, where we'll be able to not only see them but be able to hold them in our hands in a model form is just a really cool connection.
It's kind of interesting. There's been a lot of, I'll call it, discussion in the model train community about CSX not painting full units and having the cab in the CSX colors. And I thought that Joe said it best when we were talking about it. He's like, we want people to see that CSX is going forward. We want to honor our past, but by having the front of the locomotive painted in CSX colors, we're moving forward into the future. And I thought, wow, that was a great way of saying that. And also, before I forget too, I also want to mention that for N-Scale modelers, we talked a lot about N-Scale here during this podcast. We scrapped the Fox Valley tooling for the ES44, and we are developing an all-new rivet counter model. And we'll be doing the CSX heritage units in N-Scale on a rivet counter model. Look for that announcement in 26.
Awesome. So a little stuff to look forward to for the N-Scale folks. And for the HO scale folks and anybody else that's coming by, the great collector's items as well, these heritage units. And even if you're not an HO scale modeler or you don't have a railroad, just to be able to put these heritage units on the shelf. And you mentioned the packaging. You folks went back, you redesigned the packaging. It looks gorgeous. That's all part of the experience. We talked about that on a past podcast, that when you get that ScaleTrains box, just the feel of it and now the look of it as well, it's just it's all part of the whole buyer experience for sure.
Yeah, it sure is. And then one thing too, the packaging is actually you'll see it morph just a little bit. If you look closely at the CSX box, you'll notice that the Pan Am logo is missing. And we were coming down to the wire. The Pan Am unit was actually in the paint shop, and we knew it was coming, but we were on deadline to be able to get these first units shipped. And came down to the wire, and we had to make the calls, like print the box without it, because we can't take the risk of announcing people seeing this before CSX unveils it. So within 48 hours, they announced the real one. But so you'll see within the summer release that the Pan Am Herald is going to be added to the box label.
The Pan Am one actually surprised me because they still have Pan Am units out on the rails that's still in that paint. So that was kind of a surprise, but still neat that they included that, the Pan Am paint into this heritage unit.
Yeah, it really is. And, that was a late addition for CSX, but, and of course, they even had the unit on the Santa train this year too, that they did there at the very end. I think that was the Clinchfield unit, if I recall correctly. So it's important to them as well. And it was interesting too, to talk to them about the Santa train, how important that is to their heritage, and just learn more about CSX while we were there.
Amazing opportunities that are coming from all of the work that your folks are putting in over at ScaleTrains and Virtual Railfan. We did a pretty good job of catching up. It had been a year. We had a lot, and there's other things that have happened. I mean, you guys are just so busy over there. We could probably talk for another hour on the things that are happening between both companies, but really great to catch up and hear what's been happening at ScaleTrains. Really looking forward to Amherst. This giveaway is absolutely amazing. I can't wait to have folks hear this podcast, hear the giveaway, and then us promoting it up to the Amherst show, and then seeing folks over at the Around the Layout podcast booth, again, the Young Building 89D. And of course, folks can make their way over to the ScaleTrains booth. That's going to be in the Better Living Center, 34A and B. Can't miss it. They've got an amazing setup over there. You'll be able to see all their new announcements. And when are you doing announcements? Do you have a schedule for that, Shane?
Actually, we're going to push them live at show opening this year. We're not going to create the chaos like we do. We're going to be doing an announcement a little later in the day. So we're going to push that live straight up at, and we're not going to do a live broadcast this year. There'll be an email newsletter that'll go out at the same time, as well as social media. So if you're not at the show, you'll be able to see those announcements right away too. One of the things that we do, partnership with the show, is we have live stream cameras that Virtual Railfan puts up. There's one across from our booth. I think there'll be another one this year. I hope I'm not speaking out of school. I think there's one that's going to be at the NMRA booth. And I believe we put up another camera in another building too. So, and that way you can watch live all the time. And these cameras have Zoom. Like, it's kind of funny. the NMRA wanted a camera at their booth because they said that they had one last year and we did such great coverage. It's like, actually, that was all the way across the hall and we were just zooming in. But so we can really look all over the building and show the different layouts and exhibitors. And it's a great way to get a flavor of the show. And, you mentioned it earlier, Ray. This is a bucket list show. If you've never been, this is a must. This is the one show I say when I retire, I will pay my own way to go to every single year because it's a who's who of the industry. And it's also, there's just so many modelers there. It's a great way to connect with people. This show is probably 90% modelers and they have over 20,000 people every year. So, man, it's an amazing show. Until you've experienced it, it's hard to describe, but I can say I've got a good friend in North Carolina in Charlotte area who's coming this year. And he was talking, he's like, man, one of my buddies, I told him about it. And then another one of my buddies went some years ago and then it spread. They probably have like 6 people coming from the Charlotte area for the weekend. And now they're making it an annual trip.
Yeah, people come from around the world to see this, which I call the SEMA of model railroading. It really is. It is the
great analogy.
It's not only the train show, it's also the TRADE trade show of model railroading. Mm-hmm. It is everything all in one in 4 buildings and 350,000 square feet. It's just an incredible event. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And in our collaboration together is just an absolute blessing for us here at the podcast. And we certainly appreciate you and your team for working with us. So
very welcome.
Shane, thank you so much for coming on Around the Layout and telling us all that's been happening with ScaleTrains over the last year.
Ray, thank you so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate what you're doing for our favorite hobby and how you're helping expand it around the world and really excited about this opportunity with the giveaway. I hope it's a tremendous success for you and Around the Layout, and it helps grow your audience.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.